We'll start with our introductions. So welcome to our third webinar. As you know, PLEI Connect is offering you this webinar series on the use of technology in our mission of public legal education and information. This is the third one in the webinar series. If you want access to the other two, you can go on pleconnect.ca and see there. You'll see links there to watch them and see what the other subjects were on. But this one is on PLEI, Public Legal Education and Information for mobile. Our schedule, I'll be doing welcome and introductions. My name is Hubert David. I'm the head of partnerships and innovation at PLEI, one of the partners of this project. Our speakers this is in the order they'll be presenting, are Ryan Day, Youth Program Coordinator, and Kristy Ryerson, Communications Coordinator, from the Center for Public Legal Education in Alberta. And then after that, we'll get our speakers from Legal Services Society in British Columbia, Nate Prosser, Frazer Slack, and John Simpson. You'll see they have some humor. Frazer didn't have a picture, so he just took that one this morning as the masked designer, I think was the expression. And then we'll have a question period at the end. So we'll cover that after, but we'll invite you to use the Q&A section that's on the bottom right of your screen, sorry. And then as we go, you can fill the questions, and then we'll have a good question period towards the end there, so that you can ask all the questions you want out of our panel. So as you know, the project partners, well, you may not know, the project partners for PLEI Connect are CLEO, Community Legal Education of Ontario, Courthouse Libraries of British Columbia, PLEI, and POVNet. And we are delighted to have project funders like the Law Foundation of Ontario and the Department of Justice of Canada. They're the ones really that allow us to give you this great series, I think, and really, we really appreciate it. So a quick introduction about the subject today. Mobile traffic, as you know, is growing exponentially these days. Just in 2012, it tripled in the USA. And we can definitely see it in our stats here at PLEI. We've seen how much it's growing, our web stats. So are we ready to cater to mobile users on our PLEI websites? Do we need to? Do you go for an app? Do you adapt your website for mobile? And what exactly is a QR code? We'll cover that today. So we'll discuss these issues and many more with our friends at Legal Services BC and the Center for Public Legal Education in Alberta. And speaking of which, I'll quickly introduce our panelists. So Kristy Ryerson, she's the communications coordinator at Center for Public Legal Education in Alberta. I don't know how to pronounce your your acronym, really. She tweets, she Facebooks, she blogs, she writes, she designs, she researches, she promotes, connects, and builds the internet, really. And that's a great definition of what she does. Kristy likes to keep the staff at PLEI on their toes with developments in technology and the web. So it'll be great to hear from her. And Ryan, who's going to be presenting with her, is the Youth Program Coordinator at PLEI. Ryan develops educational materials for nonprofits that work with at-risk youth, as well as curriculum match resources for Alberta teachers. And what I'll do, I'll stop my introductions here and give them a chance to speak now, because after that I'll introduce the people from LSS so that it's fresh in your mind when we go to them. So Ryan and Kristy, it's your time to shine. So I'm going to pass you the ball.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Our name is PLEI, if you want to use our acronym. Today we are going to talk about why your organization should care about mobile, why we chose to develop an app, and a bit about how to build an app and some of the challenges in doing so. So I'm going to try and use one of the features over here. If you look on the right-hand side, you can raise your hand. So I was just curious about how many people attending today have a smartphone. So if you have a smartphone, you can raise your hand. A smartphone means a phone that can access the internet or social media, anything like that. So everyone pretty much has, yeah, everyone attending has a smartphone, so that's great. We're on the same page. So why mobile?
In 2014, it's predicted that mobile users will surpass desktop internet users. Some users will become mobile only. So this stat includes smartphones and tablets, so devices like the iPad. I did some digging in our Google Analytics just to see how many people were visiting our sites and how many were on mobile devices. So one of our most popular websites, Canadian Legal FAQs, about 28% of visits were on mobile devices. On our landlord and tenant website, about 23% of the visits were on mobile devices. And even looking at our Older Adult Knowledge Network website with a target audience of seniors, about 21% of visits are on mobile devices. So knowing that people are looking for us on mobile devices, we decided to make an app. Our app is called Can My Landlord. So the Can My Landlord app was a pilot project to see what it takes to build an app, when and why we might do that, the time and cost involved, and any other factors that might arise. The app provides answers to common questions that tenants have about their rights in Alberta. So if you'd like to look at our app as I talk about it, you can go to the URL, and there's a web app version there that can be seen on your computer. You can also scan the QR code at the bottom to be taken to the app download page, but I'll have some screenshots and some things to show you as well. So currently we have over 735 installs of the app. It's available on Android and can be downloaded from the Google Play Store. It's also available on all other mobile phones through the phone's web browser. So these are a couple screenshots of the app. I'll just see if I can show you. So this is what the app looks like, the web app. So basically, it provides simple answers to common questions with links to our main website for more detailed information. So for example, if you click on Can My Landlord Break My Lease, it'll give you an explanation, as well as links for further and more detailed explanations. The app also contains information about us, links to our social media, a disclaimer, and funding information. So why did we decide to build an app? One of our project's main audiences is vulnerable youth. We did some consultation with intermediaries that work with vulnerable youth, asking them what information would be useful and in what format. The intermediaries identified mobile phones as an ideal way to communicate. Someone just asked in the questions the links to the website. Does the website work on a phone as well? It works, but it's not mobile optimized yet. So it'll take you there, but definitely not ideal. Another reason to develop an app is the attention it grabs. When we are at a conference or an event, people will see the promotional materials for the app and come running. It's more effective than even having candy at the table to have an app. Another reason we chose to build an app was because of the content. So the content is based on reference questions that we get asked often. We had many of the FAQs already developed, so there wasn't a ton of extra time spent developing the content. We also added additional questions that often get asked by vulnerable populations, like, can my landlord change my locks? The content is also accessed repeatedly. One of our target audiences at PLEI is intermediaries. We try to equip frontline workers with the resources they need to help their clients. Intermediaries that work with vulnerable youth will have the app installed on their phones for quick reference when they're working with clients. So once you've decided you want to develop an app, how do you begin to actually do it? There are 3 ways to develop an app. You can hire a developer, you can use an app development service, or you can do it yourself. And of course, there's some pros and cons to each. If you hire a developer, some of the pros are that the end product will be a very well executed app. The app will be fully customizable, so you can get it exactly how you want it. And it's also more likely to be approved by mobile stores, especially Apple. The one big con is that it's very expensive. You could also choose to use an app development service. Some of the pros include a polished-looking app can be created quite quickly. There are a range of prices and pay models. And some of the app development services also guarantee App Store approval. And some of the cons include the hidden details in the fine print, so things like who owns the app, will the cost of the app ever change? There are also hidden expenses that can add up very quickly. And Ryan will just quickly explain the difference between an app development service and hiring a developer.
Hello. So when we say app development service, that would be like the websites where you can enter in your content and the website will automatically generate an app. It's kind of like sort of doing it yourself, but you're putting all the information into a website or a service and they generate the app for you.
And the option that we chose is do it yourself. So the pros of this are that there are a ton of free tools available to do the job. There's also a ton of information available to show you how to do it. And this information is available in a variety of formats, including forums, how-tos, videos, and official documentation. Some of the cons are that you'll need someone on staff with some basic web development skills. Developing the app can be very time-consuming. So our app took about a month to develop. And you're limited to only making simple apps. But I think it's fair to say that if we didn't have the option to do it ourselves, we may not have developed an app. So if you're interested in more details on the free tools available and the nitty-gritty of exactly how to build an app, you can come to next week's web lab. And of course, with building a mobile app, there are some challenges. So Ryan's going to talk a little bit about these.
Hello. So I see that we got a question about some of the specifics of costs for building an app. I don't really have any solid numbers for you on that. The developer can cost, well, it can cost a wide range of prices depending on how complicated you want your app and who's doing it. For the developer services, they can be quite expensive. So one of the gimmicks that they use is that they say it's free to build, but it's in beta stage. And then once you've built it, they end up upping the price, and it's like $1 a download or $500 a year to keep your app with them. So you have to make sure that you get your staff lawyers to read the fine print very carefully if you're going to use those. And my experience is that you could probably get ripped off pretty easily, so I'm not a huge fan of them, but there might be some good ones out there now. Okay, so some challenges that you'll come across when you're making an app. The first one is operating systems. So there's a lot of different operating systems. The biggest one is iOS and Android. So if you have a smartphone, you probably have one of those too. If not, you have a BlackBerry phone or a Windows phone, or what am I missing? Something weird. Something else. So you have to make your content available across all of those phones, and it's very difficult to do, and it can get very expensive. We ended up just getting in the Android store, and we couldn't get into the Apple store, even though we had an Apple app built. So it's very tough to get your stuff on all of the platforms. One thing that you can do is to make a web app that is accessible in the phone's browser, and then it's available across all of the different phone operating systems. The other challenge is that the phone companies are, well, the big players are at war with each other, and they're always pushing out new upgrades, new releases, new features, and it's very easy for your app to fall behind. And even with a basic app, you can get into some tricky situations. So for example, the Edmonton Public Library app, I am a big fan of it, and I have it on my phone. When I got a tablet, it was a brand new tablet that just came out. The app wasn't updated to support tablets. So I think I waited 6 or 8 months to get this new version of the app that I could install on my tablet. So they missed out on a lot of installs just by not making their app available, and it would be just a matter of changing one line of code in their app. So that's how things can get kind of tricky. So I'm going to open it up to any questions. So if you want to type some ones in the chat or in the question box.
Well, we already had a few, actually, Ryan. Well, you answered one earlier. What intermediary did you use for research?
So,
is one from,
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. For the intermediaries that we talked with, at the beginning of we just started a youth program, which is why I started working here. So at the beginning of that program, I went around and I talked to intermediaries that work with vulnerable youth in the city. So some of them that I can think of off the top of my head, UCAN, the John Howard, Edmonton, there's an outreach program at the Edmonton Public Library. So different organizations in the city that are working directly with youth. And what I did was I met with them, talked about their needs for legal information, and one thing that came up was mobile phones, not just as a legal topic, but as a delivery mode, a way of getting information to the youth. So that's where we got that the information from. So I'm just going to look for the next question here.
Yeah, well, the other one was, can you share examples of these app services, websites or names? Or, well, actually, my suggestion might be that we keep that for the web labs, but maybe you can give just a bit of a hint.
Okay. One that I can think of, and I'm not sure if they're still up, it was one that we looked at when we were initially planning the app and we were looking at doing a developer service, was called Conduit Mobile.
Okay.
And Kristy's just going to look it up and see if she can find it. But they did the kind of the trick where they started off with it was going to be really cheap, and then congratulations, the Conduit Mobile's out of beta, and now it costs a lot of money. So yeah, they weren't great. Kristy, can you share the screen?
She has.
What is it? So that's their website there. So you can see you create an app. It's fill in the blanks, and it's very easy to make a quick polished app. I'm not sure how successful they are at getting approved by the different stores. So, and I kind of briefly mentioned this, and I'll talk more about this in the lab. One challenge that we faced, and that anybody making an app is going to have, is getting approved for the different stores. So each different phone has their own store, and sometimes even multiple stores. So the Apple App Store Google has Google Play. BlackBerry has, I think, called BlackBerry World. They all have different approval processes, and depending on it, well, they're not always very transparent either. It kind of feels like sometimes depending on how they feel that day, they might reject you or not. So we were actually rejected by Apple, and they wanted us to make a few changes, and we're looking into that. But Google Play was very easy to get into, but Apple was very difficult and lots of phone calls back and forth, and yeah, and not very specific in the things they wanted to change. So that was definitely a challenge that we had, and I'm sure you would have the same challenges using a developer service with Apple, just because they're very picky.
Okay, good to know. If you don't mind, I'll go to the next question. The next question was, what kinds of data analytics can you get from your apps?
So the app, depending on which store it's in, we can get Google Analytics from that. So they have their own special, I think it's called Developer Console, where you can say where you can see who's installing your app, where they're what country they're from, what phone they're using, if they still have it installed in their phone. So that's a kind of a really cool thing to see if they are keeping the app on their phone, and those tools are available on all the different stores. If you're using a web app, what we did is we just embedded the Google Analytics code at the bottom of the page, so it tracks just like any other website.
Okay, very good. Anyways, we might cover that even more on the Web Lab, and let me just do a quick ad for it. If you want to join us on the Web Lab to have more hands-on, you can register at the same place you registered for this webinar. And next question, a general question for presenters and other participants. What do you think is easier, better in terms of an app directories of service, find help type stuff of legal info, FAQs? I suppose the location-specific tools must be more powerful in mobile app. I don't know if you could read that. I wasn't the best at reading it, but what can you make out of this question there, Ryan? You're reading it now?
So I was just thinking about with location-specific tools. We looked at adding sort of a GPS locator to our app to try and get it into the Apple Store. One thing is that you will have to constantly keep updating any location-based items. So if you want to tell people where they can go for legal information, then you're going to be updating those locations all the time. Another thing is that a lot of the help available is more urban than rural. So again, with our vulnerable youth, that would be probably appropriate, but that's just another concern. And with the FAQs for us, it was easy because a lot of it was already there. It was already available, so we just translated that into an app. But I think both could definitely have a place in an app, and together might be very, very powerful.
Okay, excellent. Brenda, actually, I'm going to ask you to voice your question. It might be more interactive. So, Brenda, you had a question.
Actually, it was Drew who had the question, so I'll pass it
Oh,
on.
good.
Hey, sure. Hi there. So, Kristy, you mentioned at the outset that you're seeing the traffic levels from mobile on your various sites to be in the 20%, 24% kind of plus range. Does that include the traffic on the app, or is that separate from the app and you're actually seeing mobile use at those 20+% levels of your non-app rest of your regular website?
It depends on the website. So for our app, it redirects only to certain things. So for example, like our OakNet website, the older adults, that the app wouldn't redirect to there necessarily. Also, it doesn't include people that have the app installed, but if they click on a link to our website from the app, it would include that.
Okay, very good. Fiona had a question here. With legal info, the content has a longer shelf life then? Question mark.
Well, not necessarily. I think we would update the content on our websites and maybe the app at the same time. So not necessarily longer, but we would be doing that as we're aware of laws changing or things like that. Just a little bit more clear than if one location changes for an organization.
Okay, very good. You know what? I think we'll go to LSS now, unless you had a last comment to make, and we'll get back to you at the end maybe with a general question period. Ryan and Kristy, are you good? Okay, very good. So let me, oh, your face. Let's switch to the people from Legal Services Society in British Columbia. So we'll have 3 speakers, as I mentioned earlier. We'll have Nate Prosser. Oh, let me just get the ball back and switch back to Nate. Nate Prosser parlayed a dissertation on social media and politics, which he says wasn't an excuse to spend all day on Twitter and Facebook, but we doubt it, into a career in online outreach for NGOs, non-governmental organizations. He works at the Legal Services Society as the online outreach coordinator, where he is responsible for managing the organization's web presence and researching and developing new avenues for delivering PLEI information online. Frazer Slack is the senior designer at Legal Services Society, a web and print designer for over 13 years. He has been involved in every web project at LSS for the last 6 years, including collaborative projects with government. Tinkering with custom solutions in PHP and MySQL are his general focus, but has used a wide variety of tools and languages over the years. For those that are not technically inclined, he can explain what those are after. And finally, John Simpson manages community and publishing services at the LSS in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's part of the Legal Aid BC. CPS provides public legal education and information in print and on the web, community training on the law, and support for community engagement initiatives throughout BC. In past lives, he managed Legal Aid BC's intake hotline, Aboriginal and other services, and worked as a poverty lawyer for many years in legal aid offices. His current goals focus on making public legal information and education about the law accessible to as many people as possible, and we definitely believe in that. So, gentlemen, go ahead. I'll pass the ball to Frazer first, or to Nate. Nate?
Yeah, I'll pass it to Nate.
Okay, done. Oops.
Okay, it's John. I'm going to lead off, and then Nate, and then Frazer. I thought I'd start out with a quote that I found, which I thought was kind of interesting and is kind of beyond hyperbole dimensions. Mark Andreessen was the guy responsible for the Netscape web browser, which many of you will recall. It seems like ages ago, but actually not that long ago in my lifetime. What he said was the smartphone revolution is under hype. More people have access to phones and access to running water. We've never had anything like this before since the beginning of the planet. Nate and I were just discussing this, and I think the end of the dinosaurs probably was a bigger event than smartphones, but maybe not in human terms. So I thought I'd lead off by doing a little bit of discussion about whether this is hyperbole. First of all, there are apparently 6 billion cell phones in the world, 1 billion alone in China as of last year. And in Canada, the statistics as of June last year were that there were 25 million cell phones for a population of 34 million. So whether those are all in drawers or dumps, who knows, but 2 for every 3 people. You've already heard the stats on the number of people with a cell phone in their household. Currently, in Canada, don't have a stat for that, but 2 years ago it was 85%. And the percentage of cell phones that are smartphones capable of searching the internet, about 50%, but the number's increasing, so it's becoming very difficult to find reliable information on this. Every month, more and more old cell phones are retired and replaced, and so now the last stat I saw was somewhere between 1 and a 1.5% increase every month in the number of smartphones. So you can see that within a couple of years, there'll be hardly any ordinary cell phones left. Everything will have some web capability. The other thing that's interesting from the surveys is that the move towards mobile devices cuts across all demographics and income levels now. In fact, for some low-income families, it's cheaper to have a text-only plan on a cell phone than it is to have a landline. Remember reading about a family up north in New Hazelton. Young family had a child, and their only contact connection was a text-only cell phone plan. So people are starting to abandon desktops. You heard that already. Within 5 years, most people will be looking for information on the internet using their mobile devices. The other thing that I ran across that I thought was interesting is that 66% of American youth have a smartphone. Not just a cell phone, but a smartphone. This is the future audience for PLEI. The other thing that's interesting is that 31% of the people that have cell phones that are smartphones are using it to find health and medical information online. And that's growing all the time, and I don't think there's a huge difference between that and looking for legal information. One thing that I always, I know this environment is all about access to technology, and I'm a significant promoter of that. However, I'm always aware of the fact that our significant proportion of our clients in BC do not have access to cell phone infrastructure, networks, or even in some cases landlines. That's getting to be a very, very small figure now, but still is a consideration. But even in rural communities, that situation is changing. Aboriginal communities in BC, we have the Pathways to Technology project, which is completing the grid in rural and remote areas within the next 5 years. And I'm going to let Nate talk about the statistics and what we're seeing in our own statistics. There was a question about what examples are out there, and one that we looked at closely, and Frazer and Nate can talk about this more, was the Illinois Legal Aid, which was one of the first mobile legal aid websites. Since then, lawhelp.org in the States has set up a mobile website, iPro Bono, and then just this morning, I saw that there was a new one in the States called Citizenship Works, which is an online tool for immigrants to the United States. So I guess what I would say is that we're seeing a growing trend towards mobile, and we have to accommodate that audience, but not lose track of the site that we have a wide range of people visiting our website, a wide range of people using our print materials, people that need help in person, and we have to serve that entire audience. So having said that, I'll let Nate carry on.
Sure. So just picking up from what John was saying, I'll show you here. This is the percent of visits from mobile devices we get to our websites. We have kind of two main websites, and then you can see the average between both. And I mean, just in the last year, it's been going up phenomenally. It was about, 5-6% at the beginning of 2011, and by October 2012, we're looking at that's probably about 13-14% average between the two sites, and it's getting probably about a 1 or 2% increase in that amount of traffic per month. So we're seeing a huge increase in the mobile devices come to our site, which is, like Alberta was saying, one of the big reasons we looked into going mobile. The third reason we're doing that is this is a shrunken down version of our site, similar to what you would see on on a cell phone. I know we've had to pull these out on our iPhones during meetings, and it's horrendous.
Painful.
There's a lot of text, it's really dense, a lot of links which are close together and really hard to hit with fat fingers on a tiny screen, and it is just not mobile friendly at all, and it annoyed us having to deal with it when we need to look up something in a meeting and we didn't have laptops around. So we can imagine how annoying it is for our actual clients, especially when they don't know how to get to what they're looking for. You know, if we know exactly what the right things to hit, and we're still having trouble. So making it mobile. We were deciding on what we want to do with mobile. We were looking at both an app or a mobile site. And our thinking was that a mobile site would mainly be single-use visitors, people who come, find the information they're looking for, and then leave, and most likely will not come back to look for more info. Whereas an app seemed to be more geared towards repeated use. We know from our stats on our website that it's consistently about 60 to 65% of our visitors are new visitors. So we decided to go with a mobile site because we thought we'd reach a bigger audience that way, get a little more bang for our buck. So one of the things with our site is it's very, like I said before, it's very text heavy, and I'm sure, as you guys know, PLEI information generally isn't short and quippy, and a lot of the information, no matter how we tried to package it, as it was written currently, would not work well on a mobile phone. You just can't scroll through, you know, a 2,000-word web page on your iPhone or Android phone and have a pleasant experience. So we decided that we need to limit the information we were putting on the mobile site, and when we were picking that, we framed it around the question of, you know, what would you want to look up while you're on public transport? What's the information that you need right now, or enough information to get you started so that when you get home or you get to work and you've got something with a bigger screen, you've got your computer or a tablet or whatever, that you'd be able to continue on from where you were. So we were looking at things that were low text but very high information, and generally it came out to stuff like our office locations throughout BC, you know, where you can get help, the eligibility criteria for legal aid, whether you can even apply, as well as a couple frequently asked questions. So this is what we came up with. This is the kind of home page of the mobile site. If you want to take an actual look at it yourself, you can just go to lss.bc.ca/m. If you're looking at it on a desktop, try and shrink the screen down because it'll look funny. So first things first, the site, it auto-detects whether you're on a mobile device or not, and if you're accessing it, just our regular site on a mobile device, it'll then ask you whether you want to go to a, you know, mobile-friendly version of the site or the full version of the site. So you get a choice there, depending on if you need the information that's not on the mobile site. So, for example, we have lots of stuff on our site for lawyers, which is not on our mobile version, so they would then just skip ahead. Like I said before, it's filled with just kind of the bare bones basic information right now. I'll just mention that this is kind of step one in our mobile strategy. We're working towards eventually having the entire site usable on a mobile device, but that involves rewriting a lot of content and reframing things. So this is step one where we work on that. So what have we seen so far? It hasn't been up for too long. It first went online, according to our Google Analytics, on May 18th, 2012, so a little over half a year. Just under 26,000 page views, which is not bad at the moment. I think it's about 6% of the page views since it's been up. A little less than the total from all mobile devices because, of course, some people choose to go to the full site. We also see a lower time on page and a lower bounce rate from people who visit the mobile site. Both of these are kind of to be expected. The information is easier to navigate to, and it's the basic stuff, so you don't need to spend as long searching for it. And a lower bounce rate, too, is hopefully because people are finding it easier to use on a mobile device rather than getting the entire thing and then having to leave. Like I said, it auto-detects if you're on a mobile device and then asks you if you want to continue to the mobile version or go to the full version. And we're seeing that about 63% of people choose to go to the mobile site rather than the full site, which I think is fairly encouraging, especially since, like I said earlier, we have a very broad audience, and there are certain people like lawyers or intermediaries who don't necessarily need to use the mobile site. The stuff they're looking for is only available on the full site. And then we've been showing it off a bit at some conferences and workshops that we've been going to. We've done a very kind of soft launch of this. But when we show it off to our intermediaries and advocates, we've been getting some pretty good feedback from them. They're just finding it quite handy that when they're traveling around or on the road or going to, away from the office, talking to groups, that they're able to look up some of the, the basic information a lot quicker and a lot easier than they were doing before. So I'll just talk very briefly about QR codes, which is a bit of an extension of our mobile strategy. We've just been experimenting with these over the last few months, so I don't have too much to share, but I'll let you guys know what we've discovered so far and what we've found. So one of the things that we always have to consider is to think of the proper placement for a QR code. Sorry, just to explain first, a QR code is these little barcode pixelated square things that you see on billboards and posters and stuff everywhere. They're essentially just barcodes that your phone, assuming it has an app to do it, can scan, and then it contains a bit of information. Usually this is a web page, but sometimes it could be, your Outlook contact information or a phone number, any bit of text you can put in there. So with the QR codes, right now, we've mainly been putting them on the back of our publications as well as on posters. You can see a poster here we had up at a conference just to kind of test it out and see how it would work. And we're experimenting around with them and trying to think of other places that they may be more useful. Do we want to put them inside publications as well when we have links to sites? We haven't decided, and we're kind of waiting to get some numbers back because the publications we have with the QR codes on them are just really starting to roll out the door now. So we're waiting to get get some numbers back before we make some decisions. You want to make sure that they're contextual to where they're going. So of course, obviously, you want them to have useful information. You want them to be enticing. You want the user to want to scan it. I know the poster in the picture here, we based it off of something that John saw at outside a bike store once.
That would be typical, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, where it's just the code itself and then a very short, just a few words, just enough to make you wonder what it's about. Of course, that doesn't always work where you are on the back of our publications. It's just usually right beside our contact information, and it links back to our site. The other thing that's really important is you want to make sure that the link it goes to, if you're doing links, is mobile friendly. Because of course, 99% of people who are scanning a QR code will do it on their cell phone. So if you send them to a page that's got, Flash or a ton of text or PDFs or something, it's not going to be pretty, and they're probably just going to exit right away. Now, the most useful thing we found with QR codes is they allow you to measure things that you wouldn't be able to before. Since the URL you're using with a QR code doesn't particularly matter, since it ends up just looking like a bunch of boxes on a bigger box, you can put in tags, Google Analytics tags onto your links. So if you don't know what those are, they're just tiny bits of information that you put at the end of a URL that tells Google Analytics how you want to sort the data. Again, like on, say, a poster, you generally wouldn't do this because then your URL would be, legalaid.bc.ca !UTM_medium ... and it gets really long and unwieldy and hard to remember, and no one's going to punch it in. But the QR code, people don't see that, so your URL can be as awkward and strange and long as you want it to be. Keeping in mind, the second point here, the density and how busy a QR code is based on how many characters is in the URL. And the busier and denser the QR code is, so the more squares you've got tucked in there, the harder it is to read from a distance with your phone. So ideally, you want to have as few characters as possible when you generate the QR code. So we've been using, a link shortener service like PLEI to take our big giant URLs and shrink them down as small as possible. And then we put them into a QR code generator and get the picture. And if you're wondering about QR code generators, they're all free, and they're all, if you just Google it, you'll get a ton of them where you just punch the URL in and they give you a little PNG or JPEG you can download. So that's it. I know there have been some questions scrolling by, so I think we can go and tackle those.
I'll just jump in and add something into what Nate said about the QR codes. One thing that I discovered, because I got quite interested in these, and I ride the SkyTrain all the time, and what I found was that there are these overhead ads, and some of them have QR codes on them. The problem is that unless you're stationary, or the barcode, the QR code is stationary, it can be very hard to scan, and so you really have to think carefully about the placement. The other thing I read not long ago was that in Japan, where QR codes really took off, they've started to associate them with a keyword, not a full web address, but a keyword, because if you're driving by a sign and it has a QR code on it, obviously, or hopefully, you're not going to scan it, but you may remember a word. And so it's kind of interesting how this is evolving. And but the main thing, I think, is thinking about how you place them.
Okay, very good. We had some questions in the Q&A section, and I think Frazer may be able to cover some of those. The first one was, our site looks great on an iPhone, but I think this is more of a reflection on Apple's iOS. Is there a way to know how they look on other mobile devices?
That's kind of a two-part answer. One part, yeah, it's definitely, there's certainly a degree of reflection on iOS because it's very good at polishing things off. There are a lot of different ways that you can look at what your site looks like in an approximation on another device. But the truth of it is really you're never going to know exactly what it's going to look like until you actually look at it on the device. One of the tools for a lot of people that use for doing web development work is Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver has an emulator that'll do a series of different combinations of operating system and browser. So there are tools that you can use to do that, but you kind of facsimilate as close as you can.
Okay, very good. You said there was two-part, so okay. Definitely.
Yeah, basically.
Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, just the easy answer is yes, there are tools, but the truth is no, they're really, without doing it with the device yourself, you can't.
Okay, very good. Another newbie question, is there any time that a PDF is usable on a mobile, or do you always have to need to reduce to text?
You can, every smartphone can view PDFs in some capacity. Well, any more recent smartphone can. You can download, if there's tons of different PDF readers that you can get your hands on, but you can go to Adobe's Acrobat, and they've got a PDF reader version for all of them. So you can still read the PDF, but if you're looking at the content in a specific location, as it's integrated in with your other materials or part of your mobile presence, then you're going to want to trim it down, because again, if somebody wants to read a whole PDF, they can do it on their phone. It's technically possible, but there's just a lot of words and a lot of space being taken up, so that's kind of hard to flip through.
Okay, good question here from why an app? Why not just make the entire website mobile friendly? And this actually could go to our friend. Go ahead.
That's exactly what we did. We took that approach that we went with. We want to move our website towards being a web-friendly, a mobile-friendly website. As Nate mentioned, when we were working on the development of that, it's a little easier, it's a lot easier said than done. That a lot of the content has to be repurposed, and it has to be set up in such a way that it'll scale according to whatever device you happen to be viewing the content on. Part of the appeal for an app, conversely, is if you've got really customizable interactive content for repeated users, then there's a real draw of tapping into the power of the various devices you happen to be on, because there are more things you can do specifically with an app than versus a mobile site. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to present, where the advantage is going one way or the other, and then also the repetition of the customer. So for us, since everybody, not everybody, but a large majority of the people are first-time users and possibly even only-time users, sending them from our content away to download an app and then come back into the content again without really presenting anything more than just an information-driven content anyway doesn't make much sense. But for other avenues, it totally does.
Yeah, okay, good. Do you find that youth are scanning QR codes for legal info? That may go back to Nate, actually.
Yeah, pass the buck on that one.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, we've just been putting them on our publications as they've been produced over the last few months, but they're really just getting out into the public right now, so it's a bit hard to say. I was taking a look a week or two ago, and we'd only seen, I don't know, about less than 200 visits from QR codes, but I don't know, they haven't been out long enough for us to really say, and also I'll mention that a good number of those, you know, at least a handful of those 200 are people around here double-checking them to make sure they work.
One thing I can tell you, I was at the conference, you saw the poster on the pillar. I was at the conference where we had the poster up, and I just tried, and this is purely anecdotal, non-statistical, I asked people to, if they knew what it was, and could they scan it, and then could they bookmark the page on their phone. And it was very interesting. It was a wide range of responses. There were people that had brand new phones that they had just got, smartphones, and really didn't know how to use them for that purpose. I'm talking about even bookmarking a website. So we're kind of in a transition, I think, where more and more people are acquiring smartphones, and they're probably going to be exploring them and learning how to use them. But the bookmarking was a bit of an eye-opener to me, because one of the possible advantages of an app is that people just find it really easy to go to an app store and download an app. They do it all the time. They know how to do it. I asked one person to bookmark the page, and they just looked puzzled because they didn't know how to do that on their phone, which surprised me. But I think it's, as I say, we're in a process of continuous change with this stuff. and it's going to take some time for people to get comfortable with it if they're not in the youth market, which, as I said, is like 2/3 smartphones.
Also, I'll do a little plug for Brenda. There's a topic in the forums on PLEI Connect, if you're on there, about QR codes, where we've had a bit of a discussion. And while we don't have any stats right now, maybe in a month or two when we have a few more, I can pop in there and let everyone know how it's going.
Okay, very good. I don't know if Ryan, our youth coordinator, might have something to say on this, actually. Ryan?
Hello?
Hi, Ryan. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. And the question was, are you scanning QR codes for legal information?
Yeah, as far as you know.
That one, I'll pass that one off to Kristy.
Oh, interesting.
Like they said, it's hard to say. We don't have any stats developed on that either. I think that this is maybe just my personal opinion, but I think a youth would be more likely to use an app rather than a QR code, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Well, this brings us to the next question, actually. Penny's asking, what does QR code stand for? Anybody know the exact answer?
I believe it's quick response.
Yep.
Frazer, do you agree?
Wikipedia that,
yeah,
and that might be wrong.
Checking.
Okay. Kelly was coming back to the question of PDFs. So it sounds like PDFs equal more work for clients, which means clients likely won't see it. Any comments on this?
I would think so. I'd also just toss out there that when you're looking at mobile stats, especially if you're using Google Analytics, their mobile stats they give you also lump in tablets, so iPads or some of the Android tablets too. And PDFs, well, PDFs aren't very nice to read on a phone. They're definitely quite easy to read on a tablet, so you'll want to consider that too. But yeah, my general experience is the more work you make it for the client, the less likely they are to actually do it.
Okay, very good. Okay, the next question or comment actually is, no, it is a question. Web app versus mobile optimized site. Are these really different things, or is it more of a continuum? Meaning, is a web app really just a mobile-friendly site that can do some tricks by running code in the browser? Frazer?
Sure. I would agree with that statement. That's basically how I look at it. Yeah, a web app or an optimized website are pretty much the same thing, really.
Okay, pretty much. Okay, very good. Another question here. I'll just go for another 5 minutes, and then we'll have to wrap up. And leave some stuff for the web lab, actually. And again, if you want to join us for the web lab, because I see a lot of interest and a lot of questions, and I think this is all stuff that we can cover further in the web lab next week. Again, invite you to go to the page pleiconnect.ca and see how to register for that web lab. A question from Dave Nolet here. In North America, less than 5% of adults scan QR codes. Why develop in this area?
Right, so that's the stat I've seen too, which when I saw it, I believe that was 2010 or 2011, so I'm not sure whether it's gone up or down. Honestly, the real answer for us is because it's a very marginal amount of work. You get your URL, add your Google Analytics tag in, pop it into the QR code generator, then I send that PNG I get back off to the designer who plunks it onto the publication. I mean, that's how we're using it right now, and that is at least on my end, you know, a minute or 2 minutes worth of work. So again, it's more something we've been experimenting with. I don't know that necessarily that will continue on when we see the numbers, but we were just pursuing it because we thought it'd be a bit of a neat idea, and as smartphones are getting more popular, that 5% number could be increasing. It is an older number, and the number of smartphones have jumped significantly. Not to say that the use of QR codes has, because I don't know what a current number would be.
Well, I agree with you how easy it is, actually, and even if it's just for 5%, the 5%, if you can do it quickly for them, might as well do it. I think Frazer, who was going to say something? Okay.
Oh, it's John. Just going to say that when you walk around town here in Vancouver, you see QR codes on all kinds of things, including construction sites. I saw a QR code on the thing around a construction site the other day. And Nate mentioned the poster I saw on a telephone pole, which was, I think, an invitation to a ride. And it just said ride and had a QR code underneath it on a plain piece of paper. So it's interesting. It's something that may evolve into something that's more commonly used, or it may not. It's like a lot of things in technology.
Excellent. A comment here from Rachel Appleby. I've been teaching judges how to download PDFs to Dropbox or iBooks on an iPad. They love that. So again, on the subject of PDF, a comment here. And Dave Nolette says, good to hear baseline numbers. Thanks, John. Thank you. And just have to look at the last question. I think I'm going to end with that. I know 2 last questions, so quickly. Did you have a developer on staff? How did you develop this yourself? Was the learning curve steep? Someone?
I'm also a web developer. So when Hubert was reading out my bio originally, PHP and MySQL are a programming language in a database. So it's basically just a simple dynamic website. But yeah, I am a developer.
And you were already on staff, I believe.
Yes, yeah, correct.
Okay. Kristy? Brian?
For us at PLEI, it was a lot of guessing and testing. So during the web lab, we'll kind of go through how we got what we got. So we don't really have any specific training or anything to teach us how to make apps. It was a lot of online forums and guessing and testing and a little bit of kind of personal curiosity to help motivate us. So we're not developers, but we did use a lot of tools and tricks that made it easier, and now that we know how to do it, it will be easy to do another one. Getting it a little more complicated using things like the camera and the GPS. That one, maybe one day we'll figure it out, but we might need to actually hire a developer for that. So.
Okay. I see another comment here. For many people, event registration URLs can be so cumbersome and impossible to promote. QR codes save space. That's a great point from Fiona. And now, we see Sarah her question was more for Kristy and Ryan, so thank you. Okay, last 2. I presume if your site is built on a well-known CMS like Drupal or WordPress, it would be much easier to make a mobile version, right? Question mark.
We've been using WordPress for a couple of our new sites and have been trying to pick templates that are mobile friendly already. So, for example, with our magazine Law Now, we used a template that is mobile friendly. So it's not perfect, but you can read it on your phone and on tablets. It's actually really good.
Okay, very good. You know what? I'm sorry to do this, but we'll stop at this point and thank everybody. A quick advertisement. Don't forget to register to PLEIConnect.ca if you still haven't. If you are bilingual, please attend tomorrow's French webinar on social media and PLEI. Do not forget to register for next week's web lab. You can do so at this address, clbc.webex.com. Again, our project partners, CLEO, Community Legal Education of Ontario, Courthouse Libraries of BC, Éducalois, and PovNet. And we thank so much the Law Foundation of Ontario and the Department of Justice of Canada that allowed us to do this today and just this whole series and the PLEI Connect project in its whole. So thank you all. Thank you so much. We have to keep some questions for the web lab, so we invite you all to be there next week and talk to you in about 7 days.